The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harrison and Webb Financial Group, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Margaret Torres pushed her cleaning cart down the executive hallway, her yellow rubber gloves bright against the muted grays and blues of the corporate office. She had worked as a cleaning lady in this building for 15 years. Every morning, she arrived at 5 o'clock, long before the executives in their expensive suits walked through the doors. She knew every corner of this place, every coffee stain that needed removing, every wastebasket that needed emptying. Margaret was 62 years old. Her back ached from years of bending and scrubbing. Her hands were rough from chemicals and hard work. But she took pride in her job. She believed that honest work, no matter how simple, had dignity. This particular morning, she entered the large conference room on the 43rd floor. The room was impressive, with its long glass table and leather chairs that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Through the windows, the city stretched out below like a sea of steel and glass. As Margaret began dusting the table, she noticed a thick document left behind from yesterday's meeting. The pages were scattered, some face up, some face down. She started gathering them together, planning to leave them in a neat stack. Then something caught her eye. Margaret didn't have a college education. She had worked cleaning offices, schools, and hospitals her whole life. But she wasn't foolish. She could read, and what she read on those pages made her stop cold. The document was a contract, a merger agreement, and there, on page 17, was a clause that didn't seem right. The numbers didn't match. Section 4B referenced something different from what appeared in Section 9A. It looked like someone would be paying far more than they should. Margaret's heart began to beat faster. She looked around the empty conference room. This wasn't her business. She was just the cleaning lady. Who was she to question documents prepared by educated lawyers and businessmen? She almost walked away. Almost. But something her mother had told her long ago echoed in her mind. If you see something wrong and say nothing, you become part of the wrong. Margaret carefully picked up the document and made her way to the executive offices. She found the nameplate she was looking for: Richard Harrison, CEO. His office was locked, of course. She would have to wait. For the next 3 hours, Margaret cleaned nearby offices, glancing frequently at the CEO's door. Finally, at 8:30, Richard Harrison arrived. He was a tall man in his 50s, with graying hair and an air of constant preoccupation. Margaret's hands trembled as she approached him. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrison. I'm sorry to bother you." Richard looked at her with surprise. In 15 years, the cleaning lady had never spoken to him beyond a polite, "Good morning." "I found this in the conference room," Margaret said, holding out the document. "I know it's not my place, but something seems wrong. These numbers here, they don't match what it says here." Richard took the document, a slight frown on his face. He probably thought she was confused, that she didn't understand complex financial terms. But he was gracious enough to look. As he read, his expression changed. The polite smile faded. His eyes widened. He flipped through pages quickly, then slowly, then quickly again. "My God," he whispered. He looked at Margaret with an intensity that startled her. "You read this. You understood what this meant." "I'm not sure I understand all of it," Margaret admitted. "But I know when numbers don't add up. And these don't." Richard sank into his chair. "This merger was supposed to be signed today. This afternoon. If I had signed this version of the contract, this error would have cost the company $500 million. The number hung in the air between them. Margaret couldn't even imagine such an amount. "I need to make some calls," Richard said, almost to himself. Then he looked at Margaret again, really looked at her this time. "What's your name?" "Margaret Torres." "Margaret Torres," he repeated. "You just saved this company from catastrophe. You saved my career, possibly the jobs of thousands of employees." 2 weeks later, Margaret was called to Richard Harrison's office again. This time, she wasn't afraid. He offered her a chair, something he'd never done before. "Margaret, I've been thinking about what happened. About how close we came to disaster. About how the most important observation came from someone we've overlooked for 15 years. He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a check that made Margaret's hands shake. More money than she'd made in 5 years of cleaning. "This is your bonus," Richard said. And we'd like to offer you a position in our quality control department. You have an eye for detail we desperately need. Margaret looked at the check, then at Richard. Tears filled her eyes. I just did what was right. Yes, Richard said quietly. That's exactly why we need you. As Margaret left the office that day, she thought about her mother's words again. She had seen something wrong, and she had spoken up. Sometimes, she realized, the most powerful thing in the world isn't education or wealth or status. Sometimes it's simply the courage to say, this is wrong. And the wisdom to know that everyone's voice matters, even a cleaning lady in yellow gloves.